Oh, hey FunAhead fans. Welcome back to FunAhead TV. I just realized my hair is really messed up and looks kind of ridiculous. Stay tuned. No, I'm kidding. That's not really going to be the cold open. But in all seriousness, we are back, as you can see, in the FunAhead headquarters, which is quite messy right now because of all of the things that are going on with this beautiful M96 engine that is officially back from the machine shop. Thank you so much to Elon for helping us out with that. We made obviously huge progress with regards to machining everything, getting everything perfectly within spec, and reassembling it. Right now it looks like a poorly wrapped Christmas present because of all of the red duct tape that is covering every single one of the holes currently. Elon likes to use the red duct tape because it is very obvious that there is tape there, as opposed to using black, which can kind of blend in with the metal and then you might forget it. Honestly, not a bad approach. But anyway, today is the day that we officially start to reassemble all of the auxiliary things, except somewhat with regards to certain items, not so fast, because I made a very silly mistake when I went down to North Carolina. I actually forgot the bearing carrier bolt that goes right here. And unfortunately, you cannot get that in when the cylinder head is on. We didn't realize that that bolt was an open hole until after we got the cylinder head for bank 2 completely on and torqued down. Given that they're torque to yield bolts, the bolts are toast. We actually did measure out the stretch on the bolts and we found out that they could probably be reused again. However, just for the sake of thoroughness, we are going to actually trash those bolts. Thank God for FCP Euro and their lifetime warranty on all of their parts. We will just send back the ones that we just put in this motor that are brand new, and we've got some new ones on the way. But of course that does mean that we are waiting on the bolts, so there is some inherent lead time as a result of that. But today we're gonna get the cylinder head back off and put on our teeny tiny bolt, well actually not so teeny tiny bolt, that goes into the bearing carrier, get that one nice and secured, and then set the cylinder head aside. And in the meantime, we can begin reassembling the cylinder head for bank 1. Nothing is holding that process up. So once we get the bank 2 cylinder head back off and we put our bearing carrier bolt back in place, we will begin working on reassembling bank 1, which is super exciting because that means things are going back together and back in time. Not back in time, like back in, the engine's getting retimed. Okay, let's get to work. All that just to get this bolt back in. So glad I forgot it. Love it. We've got our one bearing carrier bolt officially back up in place. we can be happy about that and call it good. Unfortunately, we need to wait on the new cylinder head bolts. I've been told under good authority that we can reuse the cylinder head gasket, which is nice because actually those are on back order currently, just because of the fact that it has never heat cycled on this engine before. And actually in inspecting it, it does look perfectly fine. You don't have any of this black material coming off on either side. Like I said, at this point, because we are kind of at a standstill with regards to bank 2, we can now shift our focus on to bank 1. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, check it out. The entirety of bank 1 is completely up and back in time. But before we can put the valve cover back on, of course, we are going to go ahead and do a quick double check and make sure we don't have valves hitting pistons. Now, so we are gonna unlock our crank. We're just gonna, oh, I do still have the spark plug. Okay, and we can just do a quick double check. Yep, our cams returned to the same spot. which step one, that's fantastic. And also, we did not have any valves hitting pistons. It moved very fluidly, all 720 degrees that we just did. Because this is done, we can go ahead and turn it another 360 degrees because we're going to need to do bank 2 eventually. Now it's time to lather up the edges of our valve cover with Loctite 5900, and we can throw this puppy back in.
Oh la la. What? Wow. Oh.
Alrighty, now time to put our oil return pump back onto bank 1. We've got a fresh O-ring on this thing. And then these just get torqued down to 10 Newton meters. All right, next up, we can go ahead and put one of our jumbo plugs back in place. Always replace these. And next up, we're gonna put the small plugs back in place, but I'm actually only gonna soft set these for now because I want to be able to pull them out so that we can check timing. Once we get bank 2 back together, we can actually pull these out and make sure that the cam alignment is still correct. It's not going anywhere, to be honest, so, but it's just, you know, me being me, and I just want to make sure that nothing is falling out of spec as a result of working on bank 2. And then lastly but not leastly, we will go ahead and put in our VarioCam solenoid. It only goes in one way. There's a tiny little notch right there. It slots in, boom. And then this bracket goes on and over it. And then these get torqued down to 10 Newton meters. Also, very, very last, how could I forget? Bank 1 gets the oil pressure sensor. Click, click, good to go. Guess what? It is the next day and we just got the delivery for bank 2 cylinder heads, head bolts. So with that, I'm just gonna shut the heck up and we can do that. Let's get into it. Alrighty, well, as you saw, we just got the water pump, oil pump, coolant, manifold, passageway, I can't think of words right now. Oh, and duh, we got the cylinder head on. I haven't talked to the camera since we got that on, so that's very important and exciting. We've got the crank locked in top dead center, we've got the cams locked in top dead center, and we now have the oil pump in place. So just a quick aside, the reason that I mentioned that just now is that I wanted to recheck the cam timing for bank 1 once the oil pump was installed. The reason for that is the oil pump holds the other end of the intermediate shaft, which transfers motion to each of the timing chains. And I was not able to install the oil pump because I was waiting on the parts for bank 2, and the oil pump actually covers up the bolts for the timing chain guides for bank 2. So I needed all of the parts together for bank 2, then I can install the timing chain guides, then I can install the oil pump. So long story longer, I was just making sure just now that the timing for bank 1 had not shifted when I installed the oil pump. All good to go here, and I'm gonna kind of pause with regards to putting accessories on the engine and go ahead and put the cams into bank 2. All right, well, let's get to it. Well, boys and girls, would you just look at it? Bank 2 is also completely reassembled and retimed. All right, the final moment of truth. We've unlocked the engine. Also, please don't mind my freaking annoying cricket friend. Now that we have bank 2 together, it's time to do 720 degrees and make sure that we don't knock valves. Okay, that was 360. There we go. 720 degrees of rotation. This puppy's good to go. Well, everybody, here it is, a fully reassembled M96.22 engine. We had this thing down to the main bearings, and it is now completely reassembled, ready to be mated back up to the transmission. Basically only a few steps from being able to put this thing back into the car. So we need to shift our focus from the engine for a short bit onto the transmission to replace basically the clutch release arm and the spring and throw-up bearing. That way we can begin putting back together the pressure plate, clutch, dual mass flywheel assembly on the back of the engine, and then mate those two. So let's go ahead and do it.
Oh, wow. Oh, what? Oh.
By the end of this video, that engine is going to be up in that car. It's time to shut up and do it. Let me show you where we are at. As you can see, there's an exhaust pipe sticking out of the bumper right now. That is because we have the engine fully back up in the car, and as you can see, we are hooked up. I've just finished getting the exhaust in. We've got all the fuel lines hooked up, coolant lines hooked up. Basically, everything is back in and under the car. We're not too far from test firing this thing. Test starting. I don't like to say test fire because that means we might have a fire. I haven't connected everything. I haven't put all the undercovers back on, all of the cross members and CV shafts and everything like that, only because I want to be able to put fluids in it and test start the car to make sure everything is running fine. In the event that it's not, of course, then we don't have to take all of that stuff back off. If we do, worst case scenario, need to take the engine back out for any reason. Not saying I expect to do that, but I've had to do it before. Obviously, it'll save me a whole heck of a lot of time in the event that I need to do more things to it. At the beginning of this episode, I was recovering my oops of forgetting the bearing carrier bolt and needing to take back off the bank 2 cylinder head. And now we have the engine fully reassembled and up into the car itself. We accomplished a lot in this episode. Stay tuned, because in the next episode, we will be test firing this thing for the first time. Hopefully that goes well. And then of course, putting all of the rest of the auxiliary stuff on that I had mentioned just now. And then we're gonna go for the very first drive, and that'll be big because actually I have never driven this car on the channel. Of course I've driven this car, but I've never driven it in completely fixed 100% engine form. And it will be, the first time that I'm actually telling you guys how I feel about this car from a driving standpoint. So Anyway, if you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe because there's much more to come like it. And if you enjoyed this particular video, please give it a like. If you found this entire transformation process as satisfying as I did, going from disassembled engine to reassembled and back in the car. So I super appreciate each and every one of you for watching. Thank you so much for tuning into FunAhead TV as always, and I will see you guys in the next episode. We got a low battery. Please hold.